Hey guys, so I'm not going to waste too much of your time in this review and get right to the two main points that are deal breakers for me on the Eachine Lizard 105. And the two things that are really deal breakers are the latency on the FPV system and the overall frame design. It's just way too complicated and has way too many weak points, and I'll just cover these really quickly. If you want to read all the specs and all the features and stuff, I'm not going to spend 30 minutes talking about that. You can just click the link and read the description yourself. The latency is the biggest issue on this one. Now, I think that they've kind of gone out of their way to throw a bunch of new stuff on here, and the 720p HD camera is kind of like a mini split from RunCam, although it's only 720p, not HD recording. However, the latency is, I would say, pretty much unacceptable. Now, I am not a latency freak, and most of the time I can't really notice the latency like a lot of other people that are more sensitive to that. I'm not particularly sensitive to it. However, in this particular case, for someone who isn't sensitive to latency, I noticed the latency. It was fairly noticeable, and the video was laggy in such a way that it was difficult to fly. And, well, I wouldn't say impossible to fly, or I would say borderline difficult. I was able to fly through trees at a pretty decent clip. So I wouldn't say it's not flyable, it's just that it was uncomfortable to fly. I didn't feel like I was on top of what was going on in the situation. And in terms of the actual latency number, in terms of milliseconds, I think it varied somewhere between 50 milliseconds and 100 milliseconds based on some of the measurements I took with, I took some pictures with a stopwatch. I'll put some freeze frames up there for you latency freaks that want proof of the latency. Throw those up there for you. But I'm not a particularly a latency freak, so those things, numbers don't really mean anything to me. What matters to me is whether or not I feel comfortable flying it around trees and stuff without crashing it. And in this particular case, I didn't really feel that comfortable. So that's the deal breaker. The second deal breaker here is the frame itself. They went for this sort of, I don't know, vertical arm design. And there's all these little metal pieces here for the motor mounts and mounting the arms and such. Adds a lot of extra weight, and it doesn't, for this size, a 2.4 inch micro size, you're not really going so fast where the wind resistance is going to build up and cause drag because you have a thicker arm. In fact, you have more drag from all these extra pieces that brace the arms in the vertical orientation. And the weak points are going to be these small screws that hold the motor mounts onto this vertical arm here, and then these two screws that hold the arm onto the main body. Those are just going to break. And I don't think those are like titanium screws or anything like that. They're probably just steel screws. In a crash, those are going to break. So that's a weak point. There's a lot of other weak points in this frame. I'm not going to really go over it. In general, you can pretty much make out where things are probably going to break. I don't think this frame is going to survive too well in a hard crash. So that's another downside and another reason I probably avoid this model. They went to a 4S setup as well with this 550 4S battery. It's an okay battery, not the greatest, but they're still using 1104 6000 kV motors on a 2.4 inch prop setup. They probably should have gone to an 1105 or 1106 motor on a 2.5 inch prop, and they can't even go to a 2.5 inch prop because the frame gets in the way on these front props here. So. And also in the back here. So I tried putting a Gemfan 2540 on here. I know you guys asked me about that. That will not go on here at all. So yeah, a lot of downsides. Again, also on the FPV camera, the video quality wasn't all that great either. It's your typical CMOS camera. Light handling was not so great. You saw in the sneak preview video, I flew it in some overcast lighting conditions, like partly cloudy. Later in the day when the sun's low in the sky, and you could see a lot of where the sky or the ground would go completely dark in certain angles. And I'll also show you another flight demo where I flew it in sunny conditions where it's a little bit better. The quality of the video is just not up to par, at least up to my standards. So that's it. I'm not going to waste too much of your time here. I'll show you some video clips of the flight demos I flew. There's a lot of jello, probably because of this camera mounting system here. That's another downside as well. So a lot of negatives on this model. I think at this point it's safe to assume that this one is just one to avoid and pass. I think there's a lot of things you could possibly do to alleviate the jello, fix stuff. But I mean, the bottom line is the FPV system, the camera, is not going to be that flyable for most people, and most people that are sensitive to latency are not going to like flying this. So there's kind of no point in modifying this, making improvements to this, if you can't fly it with the FPV system that came on it. So my recommendation for this model is a pass, and hope maybe they'll come up with a better camera system in the future. Hopefully they will. Maybe another RunCam mini split with 1080p 60 frames per second video with no latency. That would be the ideal, and of course a low cost as well. That would be nice. So nice try on the first try here, but I would wait to see what version 2 or version 3 this board looks like. It could be better, and it needs improvement. I wouldn't use it in this current form. Anyway guys, that's going to do it for this review. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.